My name is John Smith. I turned 30 this summer. Today, I'm planning to attend a reunion of my high school classmates. I've never been to a reunion before, so I'm really excited. I wonder how everyone has changed. I moved away right after graduating high school, so I haven't seen any of my classmates since then. I've received notices for reunions before, but could never attend due to work. However, this time, it's a big event for our 30th anniversary, as the invitation mentioned. Plus, I got a call from my good friend Michael Johnson.
John, you've got to come to the next reunion. Everyone talks about you every time. They really want to see you. I'm organizing it this time and have booked a nice place, so you have to come.
Although I haven't seen Michael since graduation, he sends me greeting cards every year and calls every few years. He's such a good guy. Thanks, I think I can make it this time.
Really? I'm looking forward to it.
Since Michael went through the trouble of inviting me and my work has finally settled down, I decided to attend this time. Looking back, my high school years were quite eventful. I was born in a fishing village. I had a happy childhood there. My family of four, including my parents and younger sister, lived by the sea. I grew up surrounded by nature. The area had the sea, rivers, and mountains, so every day felt like an adventure. My parents ran a seafood processing factory. They employed about 50 people. It was quite a big business locally. My dad, the owner, was not the boastful type. He was very approachable, and all the employees felt like friends. Being his son, I felt cherished by everyone. In the morning on my way to school, they'd say, "John, have a good day, study hard." And when I returned, they'd invite me to snack with them. "Welcome back, John. We have some snacks, let's eat together." It was like living in a big family. All this was thanks to my parents' popularity, and I feel I was treated really well by everyone around. My dad worked mostly on land, but sometimes he went out on fishing boats.
We can't work with sea products without understanding the sea. It's important to see and experience everything firsthand.
He used to say. He always seemed happy when he took me along.
John, you coming?
I'd always eagerly join him. Going fishing meant waking up early and helping with the preparations. But the excitement of fishing outweighed all that. We'd board the fishing boat at sunrise. There was always a lot to do on the boat. Just sitting around wouldn't catch fish, and being slow could be dangerous. But Dad never raised his voice. Instead, while steering the large boat, he'd smile and say, "Wonder what fish we'll catch today?" That smile made me feel like the world was a safe and comforting place. I learned about fishing from Dad, one step at a time. I came to understand the difficulty of catching fish and the gratitude of having them. When we returned home, Mom would have a feast prepared in the morning. Frankly, her cooking was the best. She was a fantastic cook. With fresh seafood, our table was always abundant. During meals, our family would say, "It's delicious today. This is Mom's cooking. The best food on earth is what Mom makes. If you praise me so much, I'll cook even more." Everyone eat a lot. Laughter was always part of our meals. Thanks to Mom's cooking, I learned the taste of the sea's bounty. Living in a seaside town, the sound of the waves was always in the background. The voices of my dad and the fishermen, along with my mom singing, always felt soothing to me. In that happy space, I often played with Michael. We built sandcastles on the beach and chased crabs along the shoreline. As the sunset turned the sea orange, we shared our dreams for the future.
John, you're going to take over your dad's business and become the boss, right?
I don't know yet. But I want to create something even tastier. Everything we make at my dad's company is delicious, but I want to invent something even better.
Man, just hearing about it makes me hungry. You gotta let me try it when you make it.
Time flew by in such carefree conversations. And then I'd return home to a warm family.
John, I prepared this just for you.
My dad said one day, returning from work with a small model boat in his hands. I cheered with joy, dreaming of sailing uncharted seas with that boat.
John, you should follow your own path. The boat that sails into the future is yours alone.
As my mom smiled gently, I resolved to pursue my dreams. But in my second year of high school, our happy times changed dramatically. Little did I know then how much my dad's factory would darken our lives. It was a day in my second year of high school. It was a day I'll never forget when my happy days suddenly crumbled. That day, I had won first place in a relay race and we had curry for lunch. It should have been one of the best days for me. I ran home, eager to tell my parents about the relay. I planned to drop off my backpack and head straight to the factory. But when I got home, I saw my parents, who should have been at the factory, sitting in the living room. Why aren't you at the factory today?" "Well, never mind. Actually, today As I started to speak excitedly, I noticed something different about my parents. They looked troubled. Mom tried to put on a brave smile, but her eyes were filled with sadness. Dad let out a deep sigh, and his eyes held an apologetic look as he turned to me.
John, we need to talk to you.
Confused, I sensed from their demeanor that something had happened.
You see, our factory.
Dad began to explain slowly. A relative's factory faced financial troubles, amassing a huge debt. That relative was forced to leave, and the debt fell on us.
I'm sorry, John. I never wanted to burden you like this.
Mom's words left me, a kid, shocked and filled with regret. The decision to shoulder the relative's debt meant our happy days were abruptly taken from us. 3 months later, the factory closed. The warm times by the sea turned cold all at once. My parents busied themselves finding jobs for the employees and ensuring they were paid until the end. The debt burden seemed to engulf my dad's smile, my mom's singing, and our family's laughter in dark clouds. Truth be told, my dream was to become a top-notch business executive. I wanted to grow and make my dad's company famous, studying hard since I was little with that goal in mind. I hoped to take over the factory and bring new opportunities to our fishing village. However, the factory closure and the relative's debt derailed my plans for further education. Not only was my dream of going to college fading, but it became clear I couldn't even attend college at all. This was because I had to work to pay off our debts. Suddenly, the reality of having to work instead of studying was right in front of me. Though my local high school was in the countryside, none of my friends had to work right after high school. They all went on to the colleges they wanted. In this situation, the fact that I was the only one who had to work right after high school was really tough.
John, is it true you're not going to college?
Yeah, I think so. I want to at least make sure my sister can go to college. I'll work.
I see. I was hoping to hang out with you in college too, but it can't be helped. Hang in there.
Yeah, thanks. Our family left our town as soon as I graduated from high school and started living in a small apartment in the neighboring county. Frankly, our lives have changed 180 degrees. Life was constantly hard, and having enough to eat was a thing of the past. Moreover, since both of my parents were working non-stop to pay off the debt, it became impossible for our family to even be together. That's partly why I had a hard time attending reunions. The town, once full of wonderful memories, had turned into a place of painful experiences. Of course, work was busy, but the truth is, I also felt uneasy about going back. Yet today, I finally felt ready to face that past. As I was lost in thought on my way to the reunion venue, Michael called me.
John, you know where the place is? It's an Italian restaurant called Mare. If you're not sure, just search it online, it'll pop right up. It's been really popular lately. It was tough to get a reservation.
Yeah, I know where it is. I might be a bit late, but I'll definitely be there.
Got it, we're counting on you. Almost everyone's coming today. Everyone's looking forward to seeing you, wondering what you're like now. You are quite the popular guy among us, you know?
Hey, stop putting pressure on me, will you? Haha. I thought I was walking leisurely, but during the call with Michael, I somehow reached the restaurant. I stood outside, looking at its exterior. It looked a lot like the place I saw that night. That night, I was wandering aimlessly through the town streets alone. After graduating from high school and moving, I obviously didn't know anyone in the new place. With both my parents working day and night, the house was mostly empty. Having grown up surrounded by employees and feeling like part of a big family, those days were incredibly lonely for me. Moreover, months had passed since graduation, and I still hadn't found a job. Even in a rural area, there weren't many job opportunities for a high school graduate. Not knowing what to do and unable to find a job, I spent my days in a daze. Then, on one such lonely night, when my parents were away at work and my sister was staying at our grandmother's, I walked the night streets aimlessly. Suddenly, a delicious aroma wafted my way. Drawn in, I opened the door to the source of the scent and was greeted by a cozy light and even more inviting smells of food.
Welcome.
A cheerful voice called from the back, making me turn around. What I saw was a kind-looking middle-aged man. He welcomed me with a bright smile, and I felt a sense of comfort I'd never experienced before.
Elle, are you alone? Did the smell of food bring you in?
The kind man talking to me was the restaurant manager. No, I wasn't here to eat. I was looking for a job.
A job? Well, are you hungry? I'll make something for you. Just sit down over there.
The manager went into the kitchen and quickly started cooking something. He soon came out with a big plate, handed me a fork, and said, "Here, eat this." What he made was aqua pazza. A simple yet delicious dish where the taste of fish really shines. From the first bite, I was amazed. Moreover, since moving to this town, I hardly had the chance to eat a warm meal. My mom, working nights, would leave food for us, but by the time I ate, it was always cold. The hot dish, flavored with garlic, instantly won me over. While I was eagerly devouring the aqua pazza, the owner, smiling, said,
So, you're looking for a job. Would you like to work here? We're actually short-staffed right now.
He offered me his hand with a friendly smile. Surprised, I instinctively shook it, feeling a comforting warmth.
So, what's your name?
Oh, John Smith.
John? I feel like I've seen your face somewhere. Aren't you the kid from the seafood processing plant?
I was shocked to meet someone who knew me in such an unexpected place. Yes, my father did work in a seafood factory, but...
Right, they closed down suddenly, didn't they?
Yes.
That's a real shame. Actually, we used to buy some products from your company. They were fresh and delicious. I was really surprised when they suddenly disappeared. It was a big loss.
I hesitantly shared my past and current situation with the owner, including giving up my dream of further education to work after high school, the closure of the factory, and the family debt issue. The owner listened intently to my story, his face filled with sympathy and understanding.
So, you're working instead of going to college. That's not an easy thing to do. You're really admirable.
For the first time, I felt like someone understood my situation, and it eased my loneliness. His words lit a new hope in my heart.
You're looking for more than just a job, aren't you? You have a dream, right?
The owner asked. I nodded honestly and shared my long-held passions and hopes for the future. He listened with deep emotion and then made a surprising offer.
Why don't you work here and learn about restaurant management? I might be able to help make your dream come true.
His words filled me with excitement and gratitude. His kindness and understanding were a lifeline for me. That day, I finally found a job. I decided to work hard at the restaurant while steadily moving toward my dream. Standing in front of the reunion venue, I remembered that fateful day. After a moment of reflection, I opened the door to the restaurant. As I stepped in, I was greeted by familiar faces from my past. It felt like I had slipped back into my high school days.
Hey, John, you finally made it. We've been waiting.
Michael called out, and others turned to look at me, gathering around with smiles.
John, it's been a while. How have you been?
John, you haven't changed a bit, just like in high school.
Familiar faces gathered around one after another, chatting with me warmly. My heart was filled with happiness. I'm really glad I came here today, I said sincerely. Amidst the crowd, one man was glaring at me with evident dissatisfaction, clicking his tongue in disapproval. It was Tom. He's someone I've known since elementary school who for some reason always treated me as a rival. It was probably because I had slightly better grades than him. Though uncommon for a rural kid, Tom had attended tutoring since elementary school. But still, he couldn't beat my test scores, which must have frustrated him. Over 10 years had passed, yet Tom's hostility towards me remained unabated. He said loudly so that everyone could hear,
Look, John's here. He's just a high school grad, right? How can he show up at a reunion without any shame?
Tom pointed at me, drawing attention. Some in the crowd sneered at his words, momentarily taken aback.
Hey, John, what's it like being just a high school grad? Someone like me, an elite, can't even imagine it. After all, I graduated from a prestigious private university and work at a top bank. The world of an elite is different from yours, you know.
Tom walked towards me with a self-satisfied grin. Surprised but determined to remain calm, I replied, Isn't the elite world tough too with all the quotas and office politics? Tom let out a deliberate sigh and said with a smirk,
Sure, elites have their own problems, but that's something you, John, will never understand.
I see. Everyone has their struggles. I have mine too, but I'm proud of my work, having learned from past experiences. Tom's smirk grew at my words.
Pride? What pride can a high school grad like you have?
Tom's friends nearby nodded in agreement. Looking down on me, hesitating momentarily, I decided to stick to my principles. I'm living a fulfilling life despite financial hardships. It's not about being an elite or not. Everyone has their own path. Tom seemed very displeased at being counted and continued to glare at me. He then approached me with a condescending look.
Why are you even here? Shouldn't high school grads stick with their own kind?
I replied calmly. This is a reunion for everyone, isn't it? I'm just enjoying it like anyone else. Tom laughed mockingly.
A reunion is for elites, right? Someone like you ruins the atmosphere.
He overted his smile, showing a gesture of looking down at me to the others. The atmosphere became awkward, yet his friend smiled along with his attitude. Why do you look down on me so much, Tom? I wouldn't want to be someone who belittles others, even if I were an elite. Tom, hearing this, said proudly,
Success in the elite world is for the chosen few. It's ludicrous for someone at the bottom like you to even try.
His words about being at the bottom infuriated me, but I decided to respond calmly. Success in any form comes from personal effort and belief. Just because you're an elite doesn't mean you need to look down on others. Tom then scoffed and raised his voice towards the other alumni.
Elites are chosen and successful. That's why people like us can't be understood by those at the bottom.
The words spread among the crowd, creating a stir. Indeed, I was the only high school graduate there. I suddenly felt isolated, but resolved not to lose my dignity. I chose to remain silent. This strategy seemed to work. My silence highlighted Tom's unpleasant character, and my dignified response created a different impression among the others. Tom, sensing the atmosphere turning against him, asked with keen interest,
Hey, John, what's your annual income?
Caught off guard by the sudden question, I hesitated. Well, about $15,000. Tom burst into loud laughter, gesturing to his friends.
This guy makes only $15,000 a year. Can you even live on that?
Despite feeling hurt by his harsh words, I decided to reply calmly. I'm not struggling with my life, and money isn't the only standard to evaluate a person. Skill and money don't always go hand in hand, do they? I replied to Tom's condescending remarks. He dismissed my words with a disdainful smirk.
If we're talking about skill, how many times more is my income than yours? John, there's just a difference between a high school grad and an elite.
Tom's arrogance worsened the atmosphere at the reunion. His attitude was creating discomfort among the attendees, their expressions growing more stern.
Why is Tom behaving like that? We're all just trying to have a good time.
Right. John is standing up for his way of life, while Tom is looking down on everyone.
My friends felt the awkwardness from Tom's behavior, but tried to lighten the mood. I moved away from Tom, joining Michael and others. Sorry, it seems like I've ruined the mood.
Why are you apologizing, John? It's Tom who's being ridiculous. Aren't you going to say something back?
Let's not make things worse. I tried to enjoy conversations with my friends despite the tense air, but Tom kept following me, making snide remarks.
With John here, even a nice restaurant like this feels ruined.
He sneered. The others looked uncomfortable at his cold words. Tom, can't you be a bit more normal? A reunion is supposed to be fun.
Being normal is a job for ordinary people like you guys. I'm an elite.
Elite or not, looking down on others is enough, Tom. Tom didn't stop, continuing with his smug expression and disdainful looks. I was pained to see my friends uncomfortable, but wanted to preserve our enjoyable time together. Every time Tom spoke, the atmosphere soured further, diminishing the joy and warmth of the reunion. That's when I noticed something off about Tom's behavior. He seemed overly conscious of something. Observing Tom closely, it seemed he was flaunting his elite status whenever the restaurant's beautiful manager appeared.
This place is so popular. It's hard to get a reservation. I booked it today with my name. Perks of being an elite.
He would glance at her and deliberately speak loudly enough for her to hear. She appeared to be just smiling and ignoring him. Eventually, Tom grabbed her shoulder, forcing her to face him as he started speaking.
Being with an elite like me can bring you benefits.
Attempting to charm her, the manager maintained her professional demeanor, subtly brushing him off.
This atmosphere is getting unpleasant. Tom's showing off too much, don't you think?
Right. Besides, Michael is the one who booked this place, not Tom.
I listened to their conversation while keeping an eye on Tom. Suddenly, Tom loudly suggested it to the manager.
Let's meet outside sometime. I know lots of great places around here. Being an elite banker, I often use them for entertainment. I could bring you to this restaurant again if you dine with me.
The manager continued to handle him with a smile.
Thank you. It's lovely to have a place where everyone, regardless of their position, can enjoy themselves.
Tom kept flaunting his status, causing discomfort among us. As the reunion's mood turned uneasy, I decided to leave early.
Sorry, John. I didn't mean to make you feel bad.
It's not your fault, Michael, but I'm glad I got to see everyone after so long. Thanks. Just as I was about to leave, the shopkeeper appeared.
Oh, John, are you leaving already?
Yeah, it's not very comfortable here. Everyone was stunned as I started talking casually with the shopkeeper. He continued.
Ah, that guy. He was scolded here by his boss before. It's surprising he dares to show his face again.
The owner glanced at Tom and then announced,
Boss, your bill is on the house?
On the house. The fee was already quite low, wasn't it? Michael, recovering from his surprise, asked.
Wait, what? John, you know the shopkeeper?
The shopkeeper proudly replied.
Yes. John is the owner of this restaurant. That's where we managed to squeeze in your reunion, as you're his friend.
The owner.
The entire room buzzed with surprise. That's why I didn't want to say anything. Sorry for keeping quiet, Michael, but since you found this place and made the reservation, I didn't know how to bring it up.
No way, you're the owner? That's amazing.
I had stumbled upon this Italian restaurant by chance and worked there, learning hospitality and cooking thoroughly. Simultaneously, the restaurant manager back then taught me the ins and outs of business. I couldn't study at school, but he gave me plenty of opportunities for social education. I was taken to various restaurants, allowed to participate in business seminars, and even went on international business inspections. The restaurant manager was quite skilled, and after that, he opened about 10 branches, all of which are thriving today. I learned the basics of business there and became independent 3 years ago. Thanks to the training from the manager, I now own about 5 restaurants.
A high school grad as an owner.
Tom still seemed unable to believe it. Tom, you've indeed used this restaurant a few times. I appreciate that. But last time you were here, weren't you scolded by a client? You had made a mistake in the numbers by a couple of digits, right? I happened to be here and heard the shouting. I revealed that in front of everyone, causing Tom to turn red. Oh, and the manager you've been desperately trying to woo. She's my wife.
What?
Tom's jaw dropped as the beautiful manager waved at me discreetly.
But you said your income was only $15,000 when I asked.
Tom yelled desperately. I shook my head slowly and replied, I didn't finish speaking earlier. That was the amount of my property tax this year. Just got off the phone with my accountant about it.
Property tax of $15,000 means an income of about $2 million, right? That's amazing, John.
Michael, who worked at an accounting firm, quickly did the math.
2 million.
Tom seemed at a loss for words. It doesn't matter if I earn $2 million or not. I don't think of myself as superior. The value of a person isn't in money. But just to clarify, what's your income, Tom?
Oh.
He was speechless. It was a complete turnaround. He was red-faced and stomping his feet.
I am an elite. My success is proof.
But weren't you scolded for a simple mistake by your client and even your boss? With his true nature exposed, Tom became increasingly isolated. People naturally distanced themselves from him. Meanwhile, more and more people gathered around me. Success is the result of individual effort and belief. We are all human, regardless of our position. By the end of the reunion, Tom had disappeared. I later heard that he was being transferred to a remote island due to repeated simple mistakes at work. Indeed, elites have their own troubles. As for me, I'm planning to open another new restaurant soon. The restaurants I own are known for their fresh seafood and a warm, home-like atmosphere. All thanks to what I learned from my parents, the factory employees, and the restaurant manager who helped me in the past. Success isn't everything. It's human warmth, friendship, and love that bring richness to life.
I've poached a young, highly educated person, so you're no longer needed.
A new department director who told me and laughed at me. I've worked hard for this company for 10 years. Am I being fired because I don't have a high degree?
Understood. If he's getting fired, I'll take him under my wing.
When I was in the midst of my disappointment, my business partner told me so. And then she took me to the place and someone showed up.
Long time no see, naughty boy.
I'm Kenny. I was a high school graduate and worked for a company. The reason I chose to be a high school graduate was related to a certain person.
Kenny is kinda cocky.
What did you say?
Yay, it's just not fun with Kenny around.
Back in high school, I had some trouble in my club activities, which made it hard to attend school for a while. Moreover, at that time, I didn't have anything I wanted to become. So I didn't have a university I wanted to attend, and I often argued with my parents about it.
You're our child. You should aim for a prestigious university.
What's the point of going to a prestigious university?
Just do as I say.
Living like that, I got fed up with everything. Feeling out of place both at school and home, I went to the school's rooftop to blow off some steam. What?
Who could that be?
There was already someone there.
How can't you, Kenny, the troublemaker?
The person already there was the English teacher, Mrs. Nancy Smith. She looked surprised for a moment at my appearance, but then burst into laughter. I was taken aback by her presence, but her smile made me relax.
You haven't submitted your career preferences, got into trouble in the club activities, and now you're on the off-limits rooftop.
You're on the off-limits rooftop as well, aren't you?
I'm allowed because I'm a teacher. Besides, I wanted to see the sky. The staff room feels suffocating.
I retorted to the teacher, and that was her response. Then, we had some light-hearted conversation. suggestions for the next lesson, stuff about club activities, talks that had nothing to do with me, and gradually, I felt more at ease.
By the way, what do you want to do in the future?
At that question from her, I couldn't answer anything. What is my dream for the future? I'm struggling because I don't know.
I think I'd be better in sales or something rather than teaching.
Leaving me aside, Mrs. Smith started talking.
Look, if you don't have something you want to do, why not just get a job or start a business? You don't seem like someone who'd work well under others. You'd be suited for entrepreneurship.
What a reckless thing to say. Yet, it was enough to clear the cloudiness in my heart. My parents tell me to study and become a public officer, and my homeroom teacher says I'll end up a foolish adult if I don't go to university. But I could take Mrs. Smith's words to heart more than theirs.
Right, I might quit teaching and start a business. Let's see who can earn more in the future.
That was Mrs. Smith's suggestion. Even though I thought it was foolish, my heart felt the clearest it ever had. Starting a business, huh? Even after returning home, I kept pondering Mrs. Smith's words. It's not that I don't want to study. However, I can think of a reason why I must continue studying. I felt more suited to having a rival and striving together, as Mrs. Smith suggested, rather than studying aimlessly. If I tell it as it is, my parents would surely oppose it. My parents won't understand me. Therefore, I didn't tell my parents and instead wrote employment on the school's career preference survey. And to be prepared for any probing from my homeroom teacher or parents, I decided to look for companies that hire high school graduates.
Why not start a business?
Mrs. Smith made it sound trivial, but I thought I should first experience society. My homeroom teacher reacted just as I expected upon seeing my survey.
There's a limit to what companies will hire a high school graduate.
But that's my preference. The homeroom teacher clearly looked down on me. Then, the homeroom teacher called my parents to the school.
What are you thinking? You shameless fool.
I can't believe you are this foolish.
I thought you were a troublemaker, but I didn't realize you were so thoughtless.
I was subjected to what could be taken as verbal abuse from my parents and my homeroom teacher, but out of defiance, I vowed to work and succeed just to prove them wrong. It's my life. I'll do what I want. In the end, I didn't back down and got a job right after graduating high school. Then, I moved out and started living on my own. After that, I never saw my parents again, nor did I feel the desire to. I feel kind of liberated. I didn't feel lonely at all.
You really took that step. Maybe I should too.
Mrs. Smith said that to me when I was graduating. After that, I worked desperately. Even though it was my choice, I felt somewhat inferior for only having a high school diploma. In an era where a university degree is the norm, being a high school graduate was something that attracted attention, for better or worse. Why didn't you go to university or vocational school? My colleague would ask me that. In response, I always gave vague answers. People around me speculated. He must come from a poor family that needed him to work immediately, and they sympathized with me based on their assumptions. I dislike being pitied or favored by those around me. Let's just focus on the work. If I could produce results at work, I believe that others would recognize me as a competent individual. With that thought, I decided to give my all. Before I knew it, 10 years had passed since I joined the company. Now, hardly any employees look at me with pity.
Kenny, you're always working hard, I see.
You're really reliable.
Thank you. From my early days, working hard and taking the initiative in tasks gained me support from my colleagues. My 10 years of diligent work were recognized not only within the company, but also by our business partners.
It was right to trust Kenny. Working with you is reassuring.
I received praise as well.
Kenny is quick and thorough with his work. It's a pleasure to work with him.
Especially Jessica, the sales manager from a partner company, praised me a lot. She seemed much more mature than me, but I couldn't quite believe the rumors that she was the same age as me. I'm honored to hear you say so much.
Kenny, you're really hardworking. I'd like you to come work for our company.
She shared my interest in anime, which made us get along well, and we even went out for drinks privately. While drinking, we talked about our favorite things. I liked those moments, but it wasn't all good.
Don't get too cocky, you high school grad loser.
I would like to think that the 10 years had finally paid off, but there was one concerning person among the employees. It's the new director, James. The director is an academicist who has his own value system. The more educated, the better, and the less educated, the incompetent. From James' point of view, I was a piece of trash.
Hey, useless one.
He would call me that, never by my name.
Go buy coffee for me. Even someone as useless as you can manage that.
Moreover, James would order me to do menial tasks, not even acknowledging me. Even when others from different companies praised me, he would say,
"Did you offer them to sleep your way to the top? You must be tough being incompetent. You go to lengths."
In front of other employees, he hurled such terrible slander at me. I have pride in my 10 years of service. However, as he pointed out, I didn't have a higher education. James, please judge me based on my current performance.
The fact that you're undereducated is the truth. If you want me to acknowledge that, at least go to university.
Even when I expressed my thoughts, being talked down to about my educational background left me without a retort. As a result, I could only keep my frustration to myself, sighing in dismay. One day, Jessica came to our company for a business meeting. "Sorry, it seems I forgot some documents. I'll fetch them right away."
It's okay. No rush. Take your time.
I thanked Jessica, who smiled and forgave me, as I hurried back to my desk for the documents. As I was about to return to her, "I need to hurry."
Whoa.
In my haste, I didn't notice James drinking coffee around the corner and accidentally bumped into him. I'm so sorry. I had to return to Jessica, so I quickly apologized and ran off.
That bastard.
I didn't realize until the end that James was glaring at me with anger. After the meeting, Jessica and I were chatting as we walked her to the entrance of the company.
Hey, incompetent.
Then, from behind, James called out to me. James,
What was your attitude earlier?
I'm very sorry about earlier. I was in a hurry because of the meeting. I quickly sensed what he wanted to say and apologized to him. However, he seemed angry about how I acted when I bumped him and couldn't contain his anger.
I don't like it when someone thinks a mere sorry is enough after bumping into their boss. I don't need employees who can't respect their superiors, meeting or not. It's wrong for someone with your low education to act so high and mighty.
In front of Jessica, James was yelling at me. When I glanced at Jessica, she was frowning and looking at James.
You're fired. I've tolerated you until now, but I can't stand it anymore. Pack your things and get out.
Wait a minute. I've been working here for a long time, and to be fired just because I bumped into you once. I objected to his abrupt dismissal, not caring how Jessica looked at me. But that only made him angrier.
Just because you bumped into me once. Are you mocking me with your low education? That's why you're losing your job. I've already poached someone with higher education, so you're unnecessary.
This can't be. We argued for a while, but he had the upper hand in terms of power. As I became increasingly disheartened, James smiled smugly.
I've poached a young, highly educated person, so you're no longer needed.
Hearing this again made me slump in defeat. Were my 10 years all for nothing? That's when I thought so.
Excuse me for a moment.
Jessica, who had been quietly listening to our conversation, interjected. At that, James looked puzzled.
Please stay out of this. You're an outsider.
So, you're firing him because his attitude towards you wasn't good, even though he's been with this company for 10 years and has an excellent work record? Is that the kind of company this is?
Ignoring James's words, Jessica pressed on. I could only watch in silence.
You are the sales manager of another company, so please don't try to interfere with us like a big shot.
Understood. If he's going to be fired, I will take him in.
What did you just say? Surprised, I looked at Jessica, and James looked even more shocked.
Is it up to you to decide that?
Then, please pack your things quickly and come to our company.
Ignoring the flustered James, she urged me on. Compelled by her, I headed to my desk to pack my belongings.
Please consider all the business deals you were advancing as null. Once he joins us, everything will be resolved. I will inform your president of this, including what happened here.
Hearing that the deals would be canceled and that the president would be informed, James turned pale.
Wait, hold on. All right, your firing is canceled.
Ignoring him, Jessica firmly pushed me forward. After discussions, including with our president, it was decided that I would join Jessica's company, pulled away from the one I had served for 10 years. James's actions led to the loss of significant business and faced tremendous repercussions from the executives.
You could probably get a good settlement if you had evidence.
That's all right, thank you. I said with a wry smile to Jessica's words. I had endured terrible treatment from him, but just being freed from it was enough for me.
If Kenny joins our company, James is going to be in big trouble anyway.
What do you mean by that?
Don't worry about it. You'll find out soon enough.
While I was packing, my colleagues approached me. They apologized for not being able to cover for me and gave me encouragement to do my best in the next company. I thanked them and changed jobs. Jessica, I would like to thank the president. Later, I told Jessica that I wanted to thank the president. In fact, right after being recruited, I had asked her, "Is it okay without the president's approval?"
It's fine, don't worry.
Jessica reassured me in response to my question. I expressed my desire to meet the president.
That's when the president has time.
Jessica replied to me. So, she took care of all the paperwork and formalities. I really want to meet the president soon.
All right.
She finally seemed willing to arrange the meeting. With a slightly absent-minded smile, Jessica led me to the president's office. There, the president was waiting.
It's been a while, hasn't it, naughty boy? You've grown up quite a bit.
The person greeted me with a grin, a voice and manner I felt I recognized.
This is President Nancy Smith.
Jessica introduced her. In that moment, a flood of distant memories came back to me. During high school, amid career concerns and discord with my parents,
why not start a business?
She was the teacher who casually suggested. Thanks to those simple conversations on the rooftop, I was able to take my first step into society. She was my benefactor, the one who shaped who I am today. And there she was, Mrs. Smith, right in front of me. Mrs. Smith, why are you here?
Oh, it's nothing much. I told you at the graduation ceremony, didn't I, that I needed to take a step forward too.
Mrs. Smith answered my question with a laugh.
After you graduated, I quit teaching and started this company. I always knew I wanted to do something, but when I saw you take the first step, I knew I had to step up too, even though I'm older.
She explained that to me, and then pointed to Jessica, saying,
She's my daughter, same age as you. She opposed me more than anyone when I first mentioned starting a business. It's quite sad to be so negatively received by your own family.
Of course, she quit her job the moment I graduated from high school. And Dad was like, if Nancy thought it through, it's going to be all right. So nonchalant.
The two started arguing in front of me. A typical parent-child squabble, different from the composed Mrs. Smith or the manager Jessica I knew. Watching this scene made me smile. They looked at me. Their expressions seemed somewhat embarrassed. You really took that step you talked about back then, and thank you for saving me. I thanked Mrs. Smith.
You actually went out into society and served well for 10 years. The reason we continued business with that company was because of you. It was only natural for me to employ you if they were going to let you go.
Just as my mother told me, you worked hard and dedicated yourself fully. That's why the business continued. It wasn't because I had a special view of you.
Mrs. Smith and Jessica both kindly assured me. My 10 years at that company were not in vain. I had never worked hard just for praise, but I was deeply grateful that there were people who saw and helped me.
Your behavior saved you.
Mrs. Smith said, bringing tears to my eyes. Since then, I've been working hard to contribute to the company of Mrs. Smith and Jessica, who saved me. Later, when I visited my client, they said,
I wanted to sign the contract because Kenny was in charge. That's why I want to sign with Nancy's company now.
We ended up getting new contract under better terms than my previous company. Thanks to this, our company's performance has been on the rise. While my former company has been declining, the high-educated individual James had poached turned out to be incompetent, often upsetting clients and causing trouble for James, as I was informed by a former colleague.
They're talking about demoting him soon to take responsibility.
The former colleague, who is also planning to change jobs soon. The situation had escalated to this point largely because the president had neglected James's actions. James was the president's favorite, and the president at that time was under his thumb.
Why do you think he was in such a place during working hours on the day that led to Kenny's job change?
When I was asked that question, I remembered that, while everyone was at their desks or out for business, James was drinking coffee in a discreet spot.
He was shirking his duties onto those with less education and slacking off.
So that's why he was there. It turns out, James often slacked off there, not just on that day. I happened to pass by in a hurry and bumped into him.
The president overlooked this too. Everyone's preparing to leave because they don't want to be in such a place anymore.
It seems that the competent executives are going independent, and many employees plan to follow them. I didn't expect things to escalate this much, but it turned out for the better. I expressed my encouragement to the former colleague and said goodbye. Years have passed since I joined Nancy's company. Jessica and I had become a couple.
Well, it's natural for young people who are together to end up this way.
Nancy said, smiling happily at us. Working under my benefactor and having a special someone, I felt the happiest I've ever been.
We need to say hello to your parents.
Jessica mentioned, causing mixed feelings in me. I haven't been in touch with my parents since graduating from high school. I was cut off from my parents. To think of introducing someone I'm dating with the intention of marrying to such parents seemed impossible. My parents,
If you're going to meet his parents, maybe I should come along. Yes, that's best. Besides, I was the one who saved him. There might be some thanks in it for me.
Initially reluctant to introduce her daughter to my parents, Nancy began to set up a meeting casually. Seeing this, I reluctantly informed my parents about the meetup. Time passed, and when the scheduled hour arrived, my parents showed up at the designated place. It's been a while. I saw my parents for the first time in a long time and got a little excited. It's been more than 10 years since I left home after falling out with my parents. I did have nostalgic memories. Smiling, I greeted them, and my parents responded,
You haven't changed much, have you?
Right, you haven't changed.
They said without looking me in the eyes. At that moment, I didn't think anything was amiss.
Thank you so much for taking care of our foolish son.
My parents said to Nancy and Jessica. I felt a bit uncomfortable with the term foolish son, but thought it might just be their way of speaking modestly, and I led everyone into the restaurant Nancy had arranged. The dinner was going smoothly, and everyone had started to drink.
It's such an honor to have your distinguished daughter choose our son. He left home without listening to anything we said. We thought he might end up nowhere.
My mother began to say. Then my father continued.
This guy, not going to university after high school and just getting a job, did something only a fool would think of. I suppose his salary is still low. He must be starting to realize I was right. That's why he contacted us.
They started belittling my career like that. I wanted to stop them, but couldn't find the words. Jessica, despite the earlier conversation, was just giving a forced smile.
He's desperately living his life in his own incompetent way. I don't know what company he joined, but I'm sure it's not a great one, since they hire people like him.
In the next moment, Nancy splashed water on my parents. My parents were taken aback, and Jessica and I were too stunned to react quickly.
I've reached my limit of patience. Listening to you two speak makes my meal taste bad. It's astonishing how much you can badmouth your own son. In a way, I'm impressed. You have no right to ridicule his initiative.
Nancy spat out. At that, my parents' faces turned red with anger.
Who do you think you are?
Just the president of the not-so-great company that took in your supposedly good-for-nothing son. Please, take note.
Nancy said this to my angry parents, put down her business card, and looked at us.
Let's go have another drink.
She then led us out of the restaurant.
I did something too much earlier, so I'll pay here.
And we went into Nancy's favorite pub and had to drink again. Checking my phone briefly, I saw messages from my parents.
What's the meaning of this? Explain us.
My father had sent me a message. Nancy spoke the truth. I replied before turning off my phone.
I'm sorry, Kenny.
No, don't worry about it. I had forgotten. My parents never really saw me. Ever since, my parents had insisted they were right, which led them to pressure me about my education.
Kenny, I like you just the way you are now.
I know. I truly believe I did the right thing by not following their path. Meeting with my parents might have been a good thing after all. It reminded me of the value of having people who understand me.
I thought perhaps it could deepen the family bond, but with such parents, it's better to stay away.
Nancy remarked when we got back to the company. Her words made me realize that I had shared the details with Jessica, but not with Nancy. Given her free-spirited nature as a former teacher, she probably never inquired about my family situation. I think so too. If I had stayed with those parents, I would have ended up like James. I would have become someone who easily disrespects others. I was somewhat fortunate to have distanced myself from such parents early on. By the way, was there a reason you left your business card?
Oh, that was so if you ever want to reconcile with your family, or if they reach out, they'd know the company name, and it would be easier to contact.
That remark made me think of my parents' faces when they belittled me. It was awful. Later, When I turned my phone back on, the messages had turned into insults like disgrace to the family and you're just a fool. Seeing that, I honestly couldn't imagine a day when we could reconcile.
It might be like that now. I certainly don't want to get close to your parents either.
Nancy also had a bad impression of my parents.
But having the willingness to make amends is necessary to survive in society.
I thought about that and agreed. Just because we don't get along or dislike each other doesn't mean we can avoid interaction.
But that doesn't mean you should sacrifice your well-being.
What do you mean?
If you had stayed with your parents, you might have broken down eventually. That's why the decision you made back then was wise.
Nancy said with a gentle smile. I smiled back at her. Yes, I am who I am today because of that decision. Hopefully, we can understand each other someday.
I hope for that too.
Nancy agreed. I nodded, trying not to let the tears fall. Some time later, Jessica and I got married. We didn't invite my parents to the wedding. They would probably get drunk at the ceremony and ruin it by belittling me. I have them blocked on my contacts for now. Maybe someday, if we can reconcile, we might be able to have a relationship as a family. When that time comes, I'll have them say I'm a proud son.
That's right.
Jessica said, laughing as I stroked her belly. Now she has our child in her belly. We plan to give our child a future full of freedom, just like Nancy and me. I want our child to try various things, but sometimes someone needs to be there to say stop.
That'll be my role.
Jessica said so with a laugh, and I felt incredibly happy during this moment. There are people in the world who just can't understand each other. People like me and Nancy prefer to move freely without being confined by conventions. Others, like James and my parents, stick to conventional norms. The important thing is to care for others and not to deny their farts. Making an effort to understand each other is necessary for living in society. However, it's counterproductive if trying too hard breaks one's spirit. If understanding each other is impossible, keeping a distance is also necessary for survival. This experience has made me acutely aware of that. In fact, being away has allowed me to live these peaceful and happy days.
I wonder what paths our child will choose.
With our kid being their grandchild, it's unpredictable. We've got a baby boy. We will let him choose his path. I'll give him as much love and support as I didn't get. Jessica and I have made that promise.
By the way, my mom said she's coming to see her grandchild.
Is that so? Then we'll have to give her a grand welcome. I have a precious family that understands me. Thanks to their presence, I keep smiling from the bottom of my heart today.
You don't need a handover since you're just a high school grad, sort of like drop out. I'll ask the elite staff, so just disappear quickly.
The department head, Will, said so, laughing condescendingly at me. Just because I'm a high school grad, do I deserve to be treated like this? I fought back the urge to shout, filled with frustration and anger. Understood. He probably didn't expect me to agree so easily. The boss looked surprised for a moment. To him, I nodded and then turned my back, saying, If you want me gone, I'll make it happen. Thinking about what was to come, I muttered this as I left the company. The next day, while I was hanging out with Sarah, my phone buzzed with a message from the boss. You were the one who told me to disappear, weren't you? Ignoring that, I prioritized Sarah, and before I knew it, I had 100 missed calls. I couldn't ignore it any longer. When I answered the phone, I heard Will pleading, "Please come back now. Without you, our company will go under." I am John Legend, a 32-year-old father of one. My parents died in a car accident when I was very young. As a result, I was raised by my uncle, a man who brought me up on his own. My uncle was frail and not able to earn much.
I'm sorry, John. I really want to buy you more of what you like.
It's okay. I don't really want for much anyway.
Still, he always put me first, trying to spare me any sadness. He made sure I had well-balanced meals. While he would only have cabbage dishes, he wore tattered clothes, while ensuring I had new ones that fit as I grew. He was such a kind person.
I'll work as soon as I graduate high school. I don't really have anything I want to become.
I was always grateful to my uncle, and to repay him as soon as possible, I chose to work right after high school.
All right, if you've decided, then I won't stop you. But remember, options are limited with just a high school education.
Yeah, I know, but someone said they'd hire me.
The job I landed was at a factory that manufactured a certain product. The only place that hired me, even as a high school grad, was there, and I ended up working hard surrounded by adults. Fortunately, the people around me sympathized with my situation and offered advice not just on work, but on personal matters as well.
John, take this if you like. I made too much of this.
Wow, thank you.
Some even brought snacks, and I spent my days grateful to those around me. Then, my uncle fell ill. Despite his savings, my salary was quickly consumed by his medical expenses and my own living costs.
I'm really sorry.
Don't worry about it. You took me in, and that's why I've grown up. It's my way of repaying you.
Each time I visited, my uncle had a remorseful look. Frankly, I don't really have any hobbies or desires, so I wasn't particularly bothered.
You're such a sweet and good kid, John,
my uncle would say with a gentle smile. He passed away when I was 20, after his condition worsened.
Now I'm truly alone.
I thought during those days of grief, the person who supported me through that time was Amy, who would later become my wife.
It's not okay, is it? You lost your family. I'm here if you want to talk.
She reached out to me, offering heartfelt support. Thanks to Amy, I managed to look forward. It wasn't long before we naturally started dating, and thinking about marriage came easily.
Amy, will you be part of my family?
Yes, I'd love to.
A few months into dating, although I felt it might be too soon, I proposed, and Amy said yes with the biggest smile. Then we were blessed with our daughter, Sarah, and I've been living happily ever since.
John, we've got a call from that client.
Thank you. Initially, I worked on the factory floor, but now I'm in sales. Selling the products I once helped create has been incredibly rewarding. Turns out, I had a knack for sales. Many clients took a liking to me, and sometimes I even landed big contracts. I was fully committed to doing my best and contributing to the company. But not everyone was pleased with me.
Hey, drop out. Get this paperwork done by the end of today.
What? But this isn't my job.
Don't talk back with your lack of education. Just do as I say.
That was Will Smith, the department head. He always called me dropout and belittled me for my education. piling on unrelated chores, or is work onto me?
John, let me handle that. You have a meeting coming up, right?
Thanks. That helps a lot. Despite Will's attitude, my colleagues support me.
It's fine. Without you, we couldn't even do our jobs.
Everyone knows my contributions and tries to protect me. But Will, who was at the branch office until recently, doesn't know them and looks down on me for my education. They tried to explain to him, but as soon as my name came up, he'd shut down the conversation, saying, "Don't talk about that dropout in front of me." Eventually, everyone gave up trying to explain to the manager and instead focused on supporting me. I just need to concentrate on my own work for now. I have a family to provide for. I've got to hustle to support the two of us. Man, I'm beat today, I muttered as I get home. And Amy, with a concerned look, said,
"You've had a tough day, John. It seems hard every day."
"Yeah, it's a bit. But I'm okay." I tried to sound upbeat to avoid worrying Amy, but she clearly frowned.
"You always bottle things up. Don't hide it from me."
So, I vented to her about Will. After hearing me out, Amy murmured, "I've heard about that actually." "Heard about what?"
Rumors that the head of sales is elitist, looking down on those with less education. I never imagined it was true, let alone that you were the one being looked down on.
Amy works in the accounting department of the same company. It seems that rumors about the manager have spread to other departments. Knowing this, I couldn't help but give a wry smile.
Should I talk to the president about it?
No, I don't want to trouble you with my issues. But if things don't improve soon, I might ask for your help.
All right, but promise to talk about it soon.
Amy said, slightly annoyed, and I nodded in agreement. Just then, I felt a bump on my knee and looked down to see Sarah with a beaming smile.
"Daddy, let's play."
"Yeah, sure." Feeling lighter after talking to Amy, I picked up my daughter with a smile. A few days after our conversation, I got a call from a well-known big company saying they want to do business with me, even though it's tough to land contracts with them. Really, thank you so much. Not just me, but the whole department was thrilled, and just when we were about to get the contract signed.
Good job. I'll take it from here.
What? Incredibly, Will tried to take credit for my work. While I was still confused, he snatched the contract and headed to the client.
Will, that's not right. John was the reason we got this deal.
What are you talking about? It just so happened he was handling it when the deal came through. It wouldn't matter who went.
Everyone blamed Will like crazy, but he just shrugged it off.
I can't trust such an important task to a high school grad. You should go organize the warehouse or something.
He ordered me to do menial work and left triumphantly.
John, are you okay?
While I was sorting things in the warehouse, feeling down, Amy appeared. I wondered why she came to the warehouse. As I looked surprised, she came closer, smiling. I heard from a colleague.
Do I still need to wait and see?
She asked, looking at me intently. Her words made me hesitate. This whole situation was a real shock, and I wondered why it was always me. Yet, somewhere deep down, I might ever be accepted. I feel that way.
John, you're kind and diligent. Maybe you want to be acknowledged at work, but I'll talk about it anyway.
With that, Amy left the warehouse.
Hey, drop out. Do you have some sort of relationship with Amy from accounting?
Will, back from meeting a client and clearly irritated, asked me that. What? She's my wife. I just told him the truth, but he looked displeased for a moment.
Amy is your wife. for a nondescript dropout like you.
Amy is indeed beautiful, with her youthful appearance. I hear many men admire her, and perhaps Will is one of them.
Hey, introduce me to her.
What? Will said, smirking. His words left me dumbfounded.
I mean, introduce me to Amy.
That's impossible. I can't just introduce my own wife.
What? Don't you dare defy me, you uneducated fool.
Will glared at me. But she is the one thing I can't compromise on. So, I firmly refused. But it seems that just irritated him even more. After that, it wasn't just work he dumped on me, but he started to harass me too, breaking my personal items at my desk, spreading rumors about me. Everyone believes in me and knows Will is behind it. However, without concrete evidence, I endured the harassment for days on end.
Cut it out already.
The first to snap was surprisingly Will. Glaring at me, he shouted,
You won't introduce me to Amy, and you don't quit even with the harassment. Plus, you got all cocky with that contract win. I don't need you around.
What does that mean? Watching him rant and rave, I found myself getting calm instead. So when I asked him coldly, he declared, We don't need low-educated people in our company. You're fired. I was stunned, not expecting him to be so blunt. Will smirked at my reaction.
You, just a high school grad, sort of like drop out. Don't need a handover. I'll ask the elite employees, so just disappear quickly.
He said, laughing at me disdainfully. Do I have to be treated this way just because I'm a high school grad? I managed to suppress the urge to shout back, filled with frustration and anger. Understood. He probably didn't expect me to accept it so readily, and looked momentarily surprised. I nodded to Will, turned my back on him, and said, If you want me gone, I'll make it happen. Thinking about what was to come, I muttered this as I left the company. I contacted Amy and told her I had been fired.
Understood. I'll talk to the president. Can I ask you to pick up Sarah?
Yeah, sure. Ben, I went to pick up Sarah from kindergarten and returned home.
You've worked hard until now. Take some time to rest.
Deciding to take her advice, I chose to relax for a while. Let's play a lot tomorrow.
Yay.
Healed by my daughter's joyous reaction, I started to think about the future. Then, while playing with Sarah the next day, my phone rang with a call from Will. You were the one who said to disappear, right? Ignoring it and prioritizing Sarah, I eventually noticed I had 100 missed calls. I couldn't ignore it any longer. When I finally answered, Will's yelling came through. You finally answer. What have you been doing, John? Seeing Sarah flinch at his loud voice, I apologized to her before stepping away. There's no need to shout. I can hear you.
It doesn't matter. Without you, our flagship product won't sell.
Of course. I hold the patent for that flagship product. My words silenced Will. Ben, in a shaking voice, he muttered, No way. You're lying, right? Back when I was in the factory, I worked hard every day to create a better product. As a result, I developed a patent technology worth $500 million, recognized for my achievements. I was transferred to the main office in sales. Being the inventor, I understand the product's strengths and unique aspects, which I use to market it to clients. Currently, the company is just leasing the rights from me, I explained, causing Will to fall silent again. Since I'm the sole holder of this technology, the company can't use it if I'm fired. He seemed to realize that. Then he pleaded urgently, Please come back now. Without you, our company will go under. I answered with a smile. No, thank you. I've decided to spend the day with my daughter. With that, I hung up the phone and turned it off. Sorry for the wait, Sarah. As I called out, Sarah came running towards me with a beaming smile from the corner.
By the way, the sales department was in total panic.
Amy said with a laugh when she got home. It seems that with my absence, the product sustaining our company couldn't sell, and now they're facing hundreds of millions in losses, potentially leading to bankruptcy. She mentioned that my colleagues had been blaming Will.
To me, it's like, whatever at this point. You know.
What? Amy didn't like the sales department's attitude to begin with. They helped me, but only because of the patent technology I possessed. If they really cared, they should have talked to Will until he understood properly.
After all, they were just trying to avoid getting on his bad side themselves.
I agreed with her point. They helped me, but they never confronted Will head-on. When he stole credit from me, they initially argued back, but they quickly backed down. Same with the patent issue. They were only willing to discuss it at first. They seemed to have given up quickly.
Of course, John, you're also to blame for not speaking up to the manager about something so important. You should have cooperated with others and made your point clearly.
I'm reflecting on that.
That's good. Silence isn't always kindness.
Amy said, and I nodded in agreement. I feel like I also avoided confronting Will directly, which probably led to this mess.
From now on, make sure you speak up.
Speak up.
Sarah, who had quietly approached us, imitated Amy, and we both looked at each other and laughed. The next day, when I went to work, I headed not to the sales department, but to the president's office.
You've come. I've also called him in, so please wait a moment.
Right after that, the door was knocked.
Excuse me. Oh.
Will entered the president's office with a pale face, looking surprised to see me. Ignoring Will, the president started the conversation.
I've heard about the situation. If things continue like this, our company might go bankrupt.
Hearing the president's words, Will's face turned even paler.
How do you plan to take responsibility?
It's John's fault. He tricked me.
Will stammered in panic, blaming me outright. As I internally sighed at his behavior, the president let out a deep sigh.
I've heard about you two from my daughter.
Daughter?
Amy Legend, from accounting, is my daughter.
Yes, Amy is the president's only daughter, and I married into the Legend family.
That can't be.
You should have suspected a familial relationship when there were 3 legends in the same company.
Will's shoulders slumped on the president's remarks, and he started speaking in a low voice.
I was jealous of him, able to do so much work at such a young age.
It appears he was jealous of my work capabilities despite my youth, leading to his harassment. And upon finding out I had a young and beautiful wife, he acted as he did.
He may indeed be a high school grad. However, he has contributed significantly to our company.
Yes, I suppose so.
The decision was mine alone. I told him to take paid leave, not that he was fired.
That's why I was at home yesterday. Not because I was fired. Amy spoke with the president, and I was allowed to use my paid leave.
We will consider your punishment thoroughly,
the president said to Will, who looked down. After using up my accumulated leave, I returned to the company, where my colleagues immediately apologized. We're really sorry for not being able to protect you properly. Surprised by their sudden change, I learned that Amy had stormed in, saying, "You all have a responsibility too." I smiled wryly at her typical behavior and looked around the department. Will was nowhere to be seen. Where's Will?
He's been moved to the factory.
Will was made to take responsibility for the recent events, and the president decided he should get hands-on experience in the factory. A few days later, I decided to visit the factory during a break.
I'm so sorry.
I saw him apologize repeatedly to the skilled employees. Approaching him, I called out, "Will."
John.
He looked uneasy upon seeing me. I invited him to talk during lunch break.
All right.
He nodded reluctantly at my words. Then came lunch break.
I'm sorry for my rude behavior.
Will, the former manager, said while expressing deep apologies. Apparently, he had heard about me from the skilled workers at the factory.
You wanted to help your uncle, didn't you?
Our company makes medical-related products. In fact, I spent my days in trial and error, trying to save my uncle. I'm not a doctor, and being a high school grad, I lack detailed knowledge. Yet, driven by the desire to save him, I continued to work on developing a device that could detect and remove even the smallest illness. It didn't make it in time, though. What I finished was after my uncle had passed away, a machine with an embedded camera to find pathogens, working in perfect sync with doctors to remove them. If it had been ready sooner, it might have saved my uncle. But it was too late.
Your uncle didn't make it, but my nephew was saved.
I looked at him intently. It seems Will's nephew had the same disease as my uncle. While my uncle couldn't be saved, the product I developed enabled a new treatment that saved his nephew's life.
I wanted to work for a company that could save lives, even indirectly. But somehow, I lost my way.
It seems working with the seasoned employees had changed him completely. I can't forgive what you did.
I suppose not.
Do your best here. Make your nephew proud. He nodded at my words. Later, I took over the vacant manager's seat.
How about becoming my successor?
I don't think I'm cut out to be a president. I declined the offers from my father-in-law for the presidency multiple times. If I had managed better, we wouldn't have faced such a threat of bankruptcy. So, I insisted I wasn't the right fit for president, to which the president sadly responded, "That's a pity. I was content with my role." But then an unexpected event occurred.
John, Sarah's going to have a little brother or sister.
Amy was pregnant with our second child, bringing joy not only to me, but also to the president. I need to work even harder to support my growing family. This motivated me to dedicate myself more to my work. Later, I visited the graves of my parents and uncle, reporting to them about everything, including the new baby. I'll do better to protect my precious family in my own way, to save others. As I finished speaking, I was called and turned around. There, my beloved family awaited. All right, I'm heading out. After saying that, I head towards my family. In that moment, the wind passed through my back as if cheering me on.
You're homeless, aren't you? What business does a homeless person have at a bank?
As I walked into the bank I always use, just like any other day, I was unexpectedly confronted with these words at the entrance. What? Homeless? Me?
Yes. With those dirty clothes, what else could you be? We do not welcome homeless people here.
Suddenly being treated like a homeless person, I was baffled. I had come during a break from work, wearing my work clothes as usual. But naturally, I had never been called homeless before. I heard that this man is the new branch manager. I couldn't believe that someone in his position would treat a customer like a homeless person and try to drive them away. Isn't that remark a bit rude?
What do you mean rude? You stink. You're bothering the other customers. Get out of here now.
I tried to explain the misunderstanding, but he wouldn't listen at all. Like shooing away a stray dog, he dismissively waved his hand at me. Well, if you don't understand, I have my own way of handling this. Unable to bear it any longer, I took out my smartphone and made a call. The man in front of me still didn't know that this call would end his high-flying career. My name is Greg Thomas. I run a small business with about a dozen employees. Thanks to everyone, business is going well, and I am living a satisfying life. However, you wouldn't believe it from where I stand today, but the home I grew up in was very poor.
Mom, I'm still hungry.
I'm sorry, that's all we have for today.
We live day to day, barely getting enough food, often going hungry. My family lost my father early on, and my mother was the sole breadwinner, working tirelessly day and night. Although she worked nearly non-stop, it was still incredibly tough to raise a growing boy like me. With little time spent with my mother and often not enough food, my childhood was tough, but I had no choice but to persevere, seeing how hard my mother worked. I always had it in the back of my mind that the only way to enrich our family's finances was for me to start working early. By the time I reached the age when I had to decide on my future path, our family was still poor, and there was no way we could afford to send me to college. While lots of my friends were talking about going to college, all I could do was watch enviously. Unable to choose further education, I graduated from high school and started working. Entering the workforce with high school diploma was scary, but it was my only option. With such a basic education, I couldn't be picky about jobs. I just had to find any work and kept at it without any days off. There were times when hard physical labor was screaming through my body, and times when I was unfairly scolded by customers in service jobs. The days were physically and mentally exhausting. Yet, I kept working tirelessly every single day. In this unfamiliar environment, I continued to help my family's finances while saving money to start my own business. From the time I started working, owning my own business was always my goal. I understood the difficulties, but I believed that if I could start and succeed in my own business, I could make life easier for my family. Lacking higher education, even if I tried to achieve results as an employee, my educational background was a hurdle. Searching for jobs as a middle school graduate, I was shocked at how few options there were. Almost everywhere, the minimum requirement was a high school diploma. If it was hard to work in a big company and earn a high income, then the remaining options were very few. That's why I aimed to become a business owner. Of course, I understood that living as a business owner would be difficult, but that was the only option I could think of. And with the money I had worked hard and saved, I eventually started my own company. Now, a considerable amount of time has passed since I started my business. Since starting the business, there have been many things to do and busy days, but the company's performance has significantly improved, and we're doing well. Thankfully, we have grown to the point where we can employ staff. One busy day at work, I went to the bank. I use a major bank to transfer salaries to the employees working in my company. I was coming to this bank, with which I usually have good relations, when I was stopped at the entrance by a man.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes. Startled by the sudden approach, I wondered what was going on and turned around to reply to the man who had called out to me. The man who spoke to me was dressed in a fine suit. "Excuse me, may I ask who you are?" Since I did not recognize the man who approached me, I asked about his identity, and he responded with a snort.
"I am Mike, the branch manager of this bank."
From the moment he first spoke, I thought he sounded pompous, but his attitude was indeed very arrogant. I was shocked by his behavior. He didn't even use polite language with me, a customer. Moreover, although I had been using this branch before, I had never seen Mike, who claimed to be the branch manager. It seems we're meeting for the first time. Having frequented this bank several times, I had a general idea of the staff's faces. I remember having met the branch manager before, but he was an older gentleman, not the man standing before me.
"I've just been assigned here."
According to Mike, the previous branch manager had transferred to another branch, and he had come here to take over as the new branch manager. The previous branch manager had been a very gentlemanly person who treated everyone well. But Mike, who had become the new manager, seemed to be a completely different type of person. It was the first time I'd been treated with such a high-handed attitude, and I didn't know how to react. I couldn't understand why someone in charge of a branch would respond so arrogantly to a visitor. At a loss for words due to his demeanor, I was trying to think of what to say next. Suddenly being addressed in such a condescending manner and told that he was the branch manager, I couldn't figure out what he wanted. Struggling to find words, Mike scrutinized me from head to toe. As I wondered why I was being stared at so intensely, Mike opened his mouth.
"You're homeless, aren't you? What business does a homeless person have at a bank?"
"What? Homeless?" Taken aback by the unexpected accusation, I asked him to repeat himself.
"With such dirty clothes, what else could you be? We do not welcome homeless people here."
Suddenly being treated as homeless, I was baffled. I had come during a break from work, wearing my work clothes, which is usual for me. But of course, I had never been called homeless before. No, I am indeed wearing dirty work clothes, but I am.
"You stink. You're bothering the other customers. Get out of here."
Saying this, Mike waved his hand dismissively. I've never been treated like this before. Being treated as homeless and even pointed out for my smell made me feel quite awful. Isn't that comment a bit rude? I pointed out his rudeness due to his extreme statements, but Mike's attitude didn't soften.
"What do you mean rude? This is totally fine for dealing with a homeless person."
Being called homeless was a complete misunderstanding on Mike's part. How satisfied can one get from insulting others based on their own assumptions without listening to them? I'm not homeless, and I have been using this bank before.
That was then.
Why would you say such a thing to a customer? I pleaded desperately, but Mike just sneered at me.
What happened before doesn't matter. I'm the branch manager now. As long as I'm in charge, filthy homeless like you won't be allowed inside.
That's absurd.
What? What were you planning to do coming here? Begging?
That doesn't sound like something a branch manager should say.
Shut up. Don't ever come back to our bank. Just go home.
Until now, as I usually use this bank, I kept my anger in check and responded modestly. Although it was a rude behavior, I thought if I explained, he might understand. But his utter disregard for my feelings and the series of insults he threw at me caused me significant discomfort. I've used various banks before, but I've never been treated so poorly. Being treated as homeless by someone in the banking sector, and moreover someone with a position, is an experience I'd never had before and never expect to have again. Mike's behavior was so abnormal, I could say it with certainty. Certainly, after being spoken to like that, I couldn't just leave without saying anything. Understood. I won't use it ever again. With that declaration, I pulled out my smartphone from the pocket of my work clothes and made a call to a certain individual. Hello, Mr. President. I'm canceling my company's $200 million account right now. Please take care of it. The person on the other end of the phone was saying something, but I just conveyed my message and hung up. At Mike's bank, I have a corporate account worth $200 million. From the content of the phone call I just made, Mike should have realized the truth. I thought that knowing I was a major client might change Mike's attitude. However, looking at Mike, who had heard the call, he was making a face that utterly mocked me. From Mike's expression, it was clear he hadn't understood anything from the phone call.
$200 million. You, a homeless. As if such a filthy guy could have contact with the president.
Mike thought the content of my call was a lie and laughed it off, mocking me.
You're mocking me, as if such a lie would work. Stop joking around and just go home.
After mocking me, he suddenly raised his voice and became threatening. He seemed completely convinced that what I said was a lie. What benefit would I have from lying? A normal person would have apologized after hearing the phone call, but it seems that's not the case here. Arguing further seems pointless with Mike, who refuses to believe my words and insists I'm homeless. In the first place, I'm not trying to show off my position of having a large corporate account. I gave up on entering, hung up the phone, and immediately left the scene. Ultimately, I was driven away and could not complete the intended task of transferring salaries, so I returned to my company. I was resting in the president's office for a bit, as the events earlier had had too much of an impact on me and I was a bit tired. I can't believe I was treated as homeless. The event was so unexpected and shocking. It stunned me that I could be seen as homeless. At that moment, an employee knocked on the door and entered.
Sir, someone from the bank is here to see you.
I was sure someone from the bank would come to visit the company. They came quite quickly. Let them in. A few minutes later, there was another knock on the door. Come in. Entering the room after my invitation were the bank executive and Mike. Apparently, my request to cancel my account escalated the situation to the point where Mike couldn't come to apologize alone. Mike, who had been very aggressive and insulting until now, looked lifeless. Mike, staring at me with a pale face, I wondered what he must be feeling standing here now. Mike had not believed a word I said. His presence here with the executive meant he must have heard the truth about me. The executive who came with Mike seemed to be standing in for the president, who had prior commitments and couldn't come in person. Therefore, they sent a high-ranking executive instead. After explaining the situation, the executive then knelt before me.
I deeply apologize for the disrespectful behavior Mike displayed towards you.
He knelt down on his knees to the floor in apology. I thought we had a good relationship, but this incident was truly regrettable. I candidly expressed my feelings. I was honest in stating my feelings. I had no intention of closing my corporate account until what had just happened. But the words thrown at me made me want to cancel it within just about 10 minutes.
I truly understand the gravity of what has happened. However, could you possibly reconsider closing your corporate account?
It seems the executive was sent by the president to try and stop me from closing the account. $200 million is a significant amount, and naturally, the bank would not want to lose such a client. The president probably thought that having a senior executive apologize would help de-escalate the situation. Even so. But after being subjected to such harsh words, I wasn't ready to forgive so easily. I glanced at Mike, who stood slightly behind the executive. Looking pale, bowed down, and seemingly shaking. He must have been shocked to find out that the man in work clothes he had scorned as a homeless person actually had a $200 million account. There's a reason I have such a substantial corporate account. I currently run a recycling business, and ever since I started saving money, I wanted to work in this field. Even as a high school graduate, I knew that environmental issues were a pressing concern both domestically and internationally. And if I was going to start a business, I wanted it to benefit people. However, getting the business on track was not a simple task. Starting from scratch, I didn't know which way to turn. Because of this, results didn't come immediately after I started. For a while after establishing the company, I struggled without seeing much success. Still, having put so much effort into reaching the startup phase, I was not about to give up easily. I can't go on like this. I have to create something unique and strong. To get out of this situation, I first needed to come up with something that would make the company stand out. From there, I dreamed of success every day and continued to work hard. I learned on my own and even spent money I didn't have to gain cooperation from university research institutions. Though it took time, my efforts paid off, and I successfully developed a unique technology. The technology I developed enabled the rapid recycling of waste materials. With the increased speed of recycling, efficiency improved beyond previous levels. The first to notice my technology were countries in Europe, sensitive to environmental issues worldwide. As European companies began to take interest in the technology, my company became globally recognized. Companies worldwide wanted licensing agreements for the technology I developed, and many contracts brought substantial profits to the company. Additionally, as the company's reputation grew, the profits from our original recycling operations also doubled. I had held a corporate account at Mike's Bank since I started the business, which is why I had deposited the $200 million in profits there. But even though we have transformed into a company that performs that well, I myself did not want to change, and I don't think I should change. I can't be the only one in the CEO's office and act all important, and I still wear my work clothes and work in the field. I also really like that. I may not look like a typical CEO. Even so, that's no excuse for someone to hurl such vile words just because I'm wearing slightly dirty work clothes.
I'm sorry for earlier.
Mike, coming next to the kneeling executive, also knelt down. He seemed as meek as a borrowed cat, but after what was said, I wasn't in a forgiving mood. I've been grateful to all the past branch managers since the beginning of my business, which is why I kept using this bank. I never expected to be treated like this. When I was starting my business, without much education but full of determination, previous branch managers had treated me very well. Each branch manager was kind-hearted, and I always enjoyed using the bank. I'm still grateful to those past managers, which is why I haven't changed banks until now. I was grateful, but this incident caused more discomfort than gratitude.
Yes, I spoke very inappropriately. I am truly sorry.
Mike repeatedly apologized to me. However, he is a branch manager. Such a person should not wield power to spout abuse at clients. It's inexcusable. He's not suited for a leadership position. Seeing such a person, it's possible that more bankers could start judging people by their appearance. I will never forgive you.
Please, I'm begging you.
Mike pleaded, repeatedly rubbing his forehead on the floor. Would you forgive someone if you were driven away by a company you always had good relations with, after they said the same things to you?
Well.
Mike stammered, clearly at a loss for words. It's no wonder he couldn't respond. After uttering such terrible things. You can't respond, can you? That's how awful your words were. I pressed further, and Mike's expression turned to one of utter despair, and he froze. Afterwards, Mike and the executive repeated their apologies and left. About an hour after they had left, I received a call from the bank's president.
Mike has caused a tremendous blunder, and it reflects a lack of proper oversight on our part.
The president apologized. I had intended to continue our relationship, but this is regrettable.
Would you reconsider? We will ensure such an incident never happens again.
Like Mike and the executive, the president also hoped to continue the business relationship. Thank you for everything until now. But I couldn't change my mind. Although the executive and the president acted quickly once they knew what Mike had done. Sometimes it's too late after the fact. This incident was one of those times. After canceling a $200 million corporate account, I opened a new one at a different bank, which turned out to be a rival of Mike's bank. The cancellation of such a large account caused quite a stir at his bank. Mike, who caused the problem, was demoted from branch manager to an entry-level position as a result of being held accountable. Mike, who had acted so high and mighty as a branch manager, was now working as a teller at a regional branch. Given that Mike was in his early 50s, a demotion to an entry-level position at his age meant that promotion was highly unlikely. He might end up working as a teller until retirement. A single mistake cost Mike a lot. I heard this from an official at the rival bank during a recent visit. If Mike hadn't judged me by my appearance, none of this would have happened. Or if I had been dressed sharply in an expensive suit, looking every bit the part of a president, Mike probably wouldn't have treated me so terribly. But perhaps, as long as Mike held those values, this issue was inevitable. In fact, many of the managers around me are my type. I guess not everyone wears nice clothes just because they are CEOs. I hope Mike has learned from this incident that judging people by their appearance can lead to severe consequences. This time, I was judged by my appearance and subjected to terrible words, which was a very unpleasant experience. The words spoken to me then are not easily forgotten. As someone who has been judged by appearance, I never want to be the kind of person who judges others solely by their looks. I intend to continue to work, keeping in mind that I must be a person who can properly know and judge people on the inside.
We are all serving customers. Wait for 3 hours.
Before heading overseas for a business trip, I rushed to the bank to open an account. However, the man at the counter, who turned out to be the assistant branch manager, provided sloppy service, and I was forced to wait for a long time. I had no choice but to wait, but business hours ended and I couldn't make the payment on this day. The man laughed off my inconvenience and told me to leave despite making me wait. The $100 million deposit that was supposed to be made today didn't happen, so never mind. While waiting, I got angry at the man for his terrible customer service and made a call to someone. The man, who carelessly thought it useless to call the police, turned pale at the arrival of the person I had called. My name is Luke Miller, 51 years old. Today, I intended to go to the bank to open an account, but work got busy and I ran behind schedule. The bank closes early at 3 p.m., so I had to hurry with the procedures to make it in time today. I'm leaving for an overseas business trip tomorrow and won't be back in the USA for a while. That's why I regret not handling the procedures earlier. Anyway, I hurried to the bank. I lost my breath and arrived at the bank, crowded with customers. The counters were full, and some customers were even standing while waiting. I could imagine that I would have to wait for an hour. But I was introduced to this bank by an acquaintance who had arranged for the bank staff to take care of me upon mentioning my name. I was going to receive the service without ticket number. "Excuse me, I am Miller, but..." I approached a male staff at the counter. He seemed to be my age or slightly older.
"Yes,"
he replied quite rudely and looked me up and down.
"This isn't a job center, you know."
I came here for bank business." I didn't understand why he mentioned a job center to me. Then, the man sighed heavily.
"What? With those cheap-looking clothes? I thought you were some unemployed bum."
I wish I had misheard him when he mumbled that. My clothes were quite simple, but I didn't know why he had labeled me poor. "No, I mean, I had an appointment, Miller."
"Appointment? Never heard such a name. We don't take appointments here. It's first come, first served."
Wait, that can't be right. The person who referred me wouldn't make such a communication mistake. As I tried to clarify, another bank employee approached me.
"The assistant manager, David. A VIP customer is calling for you."
"Got it. Anyway, we don't take appointments. Wait with this number."
Okay." David, as he was called, brushed me off with his careless attitude and walked away. It is unexpected that he was the assistant branch manager, but can he deal with customers like that? I thought to myself, but I waited my turn quietly. Since all seats were taken by other customers, I stood, but according to the number on the monitor, my number was still ahead. Looking around, I noticed that the other customers were dressed in fine suits or clean, high-end clothes, all seemingly wealthy. This bank, located in a wealthy downtown area, seemed to cater to a clientele of well-off individuals. In my shirt and shorts, I might have stood out awkwardly among them. As David mentioned previously, he responded to other rich customers with a smile on his face. He had a polite service that was different from how he treated me, and I felt the difference in treatment. The crowd had grown since I arrived, indicating an even longer wait time from now. Then, a man who looked like a typical elite businessman walked in and spoke to David.
You have a reservation, right? We've been expecting you. Please come this way.
Despite claiming they didn't accept reservations, David prioritized the customer who arrived after me. I rushed to the counter where David was. It turns out you do take reservations, right? I'm really in a hurry here. Can you do something? I need to open an account and make a deposit today.
We are all serving customers. Wait for 3 hours.
Despite my attempt to negotiate, David dismissed me without even looking at my face.
Other customers are also waiting patiently. We can't give you special treatment.
I was forced to take a new number and wait again. But the way David treated me left me feeling irritated. Though he told me to wait for 3 hours, it was already past noon. The bank's counter service typically ends at 3 p.m., and waiting for 3 hours would mean I'd miss the deadline. As my anxiety grew, I kept checking the monitor, but my number never appeared. After an hour, the crowds go down, and the monitor shows a number close to mine. Just as I thought my turn was coming up, the next number called was one after mine. At the same time, I heard a bank employee calling out,
Customer with ticket number 312, please proceed to counter 2.
What? That's not my number. My number had been skipped. There was no way I wouldn't have noticed it being called, as I was paying close attention. Deciding that it was open to complaint, I approached the bank employee once more. Excuse me, I've been waiting for a while, but my number got skipped.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me check with another staff member.
I asked another bank employee who wasn't David, and she apologized and tried to get me through. But then David showed up, and the employee's demeanor turned somber.
What did you do?
Assistant Manager David, we skipped this customer's number by mistake.
The bank employee explained nervously to David, and he chuckled through his nose upon seeing me.
You're done here. Go handle something else.
Yes.
At David's stern command, the employee quietly left. Assistant Manager, I've been waiting here for a while. When am I going to be called? I asked sarcastically, but David just grinned.
If your number was skipped, just line up again. Maybe you were zoning out and didn't notice.
That's ridiculous. I already used the bathroom and kept looking at the monitor. It's impossible to skip a customer's number. Then David laughed at my clothes.
Wearing such poor-looking clothes lowers the bank's dignity. Come back in something nicer.
I looked at my outfit. It wasn't anything fancy, just a simple and modest shirt and shorts. I pride myself on simple designs and quality materials, so being called poor was an insult. Just so you know, this is a designer brand. Do you harass customers based on their looks?
The designer clothes, huh? I'm in charge here while the branch manager is away. It's only natural to be cautious of suspicious customers. If you wanted proper service, you should have lined up again.
But I was. Oh, wait a minute. As I tried to argue, David quickly returned to his post. Stuck with my irritation and nowhere else to turn, I found myself waiting yet again.
Excuse me, mister?
Perhaps because I had been sitting there for so long, another bank employee tried to approach me. But David noticed and came over.
You handle that customer over there. I've got this under control.
Oh, but...
The bank employee, halted by David, gave me a worried glance, seemingly torn about following his order.
Come on. I'm giving the orders here. Off you go.
David, who has no patience, forces the bank employee away. I frowned and glared at him, and he responded with a condescending sales smile.
We prioritized other customers who were ahead, so please wait a bit longer.
Please hurry. I'm really in a rush here. I was sitting all the time, and my frustration grew, and I responded gruffly. David's facade dropped to a serious look for a moment, but then he resumed his fake smile and returned to his work. With nothing else to do but wait, I found myself observing the people coming and going. Eventually, I noticed the interactions between the bank employees and David. Even though he was busy, David seemed to be just directing traffic and giving orders to the employees. Understandably, managing staff during such busy times is crucial, but it seemed like they were intimidated by him. 2 hours later, I yawned several times and realized that the number of customers had decreased significantly, and it was almost the closing time. A few employees began the closing procedures. Then, David approached me with a smirk.
Oh, still here. We're closing for today. Come back another time. Or were you planning to squat here? This isn't a shelter for the homeless like you. Get out.
Deep down, I knew David had no intention of serving me. I had hoped to make my deposit today, but because of him, it was too late. Do you always treat customers you don't like this way?
We have the right to choose our customers. It's only natural to be cautious of odd ones.
Don't judge people by their appearance. It's rude. David had labeled me as a suspicious customer based on how I look. I am just a guy over 50, not acting suspicious in any way. It's unacceptable to judge and treat customers differently based on their looks. The other bank employees watched us from a distance, looking uneasy, but none dared to confront David. He must have pressured them into submission, making it impossible for them to oppose him. It was a mistake to come to the bank where people like you work. I wonder what the branch manager would say if they saw how you treat customers. I said sarcastically, but David just laughed it off. Unable to bear it any longer, I asked him, "Are you really okay with this?"
What?
I confirmed with David. I was ready with my next move if he refused to provide sincere service. Pulling out my cell phone from my pocket, I pushed a number.
Are you going to call the police? It's useless to do that. On the other hand, the police will get mad at you for obstructing business.
Ignoring David, I called the person who had referred me to the bank. The phone was answered after 2 rings. Hello, is this the branch manager? David looked bewildered. The $100 million deposit that was supposed to be made today didn't happen, so never mind. I told him so on the phone.
Why are you, an ordinary person, on the phone with our branch manager? He's too busy to even talk to the staff here. Or are you talking about a different branch manager?
No, I actually called the branch manager of this bank directly on his personal number.
What? How is someone like you connected to the branch manager?
David's exclamation caused a stir among the other bank employees. I just happened to have a business connection. The branch manager recommended this bank to me. The branch manager introduced me to the bank's membership, which promised added interest on savings accounts, preferential exchange rates for foreign currency, and complimentary health checkups, among other services. Furthermore, I heard premium members with over $1 million would receive services even after retirement. I plan to deposit some money before going on a business trip overseas. The branch manager said to prioritize guiding me. Didn't you hear anything about it?
From the branch manager.
David began to panic, casting glances at the other employees. They all seemed clueless and shook their heads.
See, not just me, they all said they didn't hear about it. You were trying to trick me, weren't you? I'll sue you for obstruction of business if you don't leave quietly.
David, relieved that he wasn't at fault, pointed at me triumphantly. Just then, I heard footsteps and turned to look.
No, I did tell David. Today, Mr. Miller was supposed to come in to open an account, and I told him to ensure you were well taken care of.
Everyone's gaze shifted to the calm, low voice. The branch manager appeared from the staff entrance.
Branch manager, I thought you were at the headquarters today.
I was, but I hurried back after receiving a call from Mr. Miller in a taxi.
The branch manager glared at David, who suddenly lost his bluster and looked like a scolded cat.
I sent you an email. Didn't you check it?
Email?
David fumbled for his work phone. He stopped in his tracks, staring at the screen. It seemed he hadn't noticed the branch manager's email.
I didn't notice it among the other emails.
David's shaky voice left me and the other employees speechless. If David missed the email from the branch manager, it's understandable that the others were unaware. The branch manager frowned deeply, glaring at him.
How could you not notice my message?
The branch manager's angry voice echoed through the bank. David flinched visibly.
But why would you favor such a man? He doesn't look wealthy at all. This poorly dressed guy.
David pointed at me, attempting to justify himself. But the more he explained, the deeper he dug his own grave. Sorry for looking like a poor man.
Not at all. Mr. Miller is a very distinguished person.
As I sulked, the branch manager hurried to defend me. David, unable to comprehend, scowled.
Branch manager, who exactly is this man?
Watch your mouth. Mr. Miller is a businessman who owns multiple companies.
I nodded along. I am the president and business person of several apparel companies. I have several stores and offices abroad, constantly traveling the world for inspections. The clothes I'm wearing are from my own brand, a piece I'm particularly proud of for its material quality. I also own much real estate, from which I derive a significant income. I was planning to deposit $100 million before leaving for a business trip overseas tomorrow.
$100 million.
The sheer amount left David speechless. I had met the branch manager through a business acquaintance who introduced me to the member services. It's quite rare to have a customer with assets of $100 million, so I've become a high-value customer for the bank. However, letting go of high-value customers would be a significant loss for the bank. Besides, if it was the assistant manager David's fault, the bank's reputation would be damaged. He knows the identity of the person he harassed, and his face has turned pale. I don't really want any special treatment, but your bank would have been a good business partner if he had served me like any other customer. I sighed deeply while looking at David.
Mr. Miller, did our David do something rude to you? Could you please tell me the details?
Yes, of course. I explained in detail to the branch manager everything that had happened since I arrived at the bank. Despite not remembering doing anything to David, he treated me very rudely. He never called me even after waiting for a long time. He prioritized other customers and skipped my number. When I complained, he mocked my appearance and provided terrible service.
Is that true, David?
The branch manager, after listening to my story, questioned David with a red face. David turned pale, shaking his head repeatedly in denial.
No, it's not true. I was properly assisting the customer. It was just crowded today, and I might have been a bit rough due to the rush, but I certainly didn't mistreat Mr. Miller.
Although he seemed to understand what he had done, David trembled but stubbornly refused to admit wrongdoing. Are you going to make excuses? If you sincerely admit your actions and apologize to me, I might forgive you.
I'm not making excuses. I really didn't do anything wrong.
I gave him a chance to apologize, but David obstinately refused to acknowledge his fault. However, even if the branch manager didn't know, I, as the party involved, knew what David had done. And the other bank employees who had witnessed me waiting for a long time must also be aware. Well then, branch manager, ask them as well.
Them.
I pointed towards the bank employees and said to the branch manager, they have been handling customers for long, so they should know I was here. Moreover, that guy there tried to talk to me, but David stopped him. Before closing, one bank employee approached me, but David prevented him and directed him to other customers.
How was David's customer service, guys? You all saw how he treated Mr. Miller, didn't you?
The branch manager approached the bank employees and sought to confirm the facts. But they hesitated to speak up and did not open their mouths.
Hey, this is my order. I'm asking about David's service.
While his tone was relatively calm, their continued silence seemed to push them towards revealing the truth. I looked at David. He was staring silently at the bank employees. It was as if he was silently pressuring them to keep their mouths shut. Suddenly, I remembered how the bank employees had appeared cowed in front of David. I thought, perhaps David pressured them when the branch manager wasn't present. If David has done something to you, you'd be better off throwing up here now. Otherwise, you'll continue to be subjected to this. I addressed the bank employees in this way.
Wait a minute, Mr. Miller. Why are you saying such negative things? It's almost like you suggest I've been harassing these people.
David hurriedly tried to stop me. Despite his forced smile, his awkward grin betrayed signs of anxiety. I don't know if it's true, but I thought so. It's unusual to be so frightened of you.
That's...
When I spoke plainly, David stuttered.
So, what's the truth? What about you guys?
Encouraged by the branch manager, the bank employees looked at each other and seemed to make up their minds. The bank employees hesitated but finally spoke up.
Actually, when the branch manager wasn't around, the assistant branch manager gave us unreasonable orders. He spent 3 hours lecturing employees with poor sales performance and even tried to make a newly joined staff member write reports, shouting at them until they cried.
What they told us was all about severe harassment. David seemed to have been using his position as assistant branch manager to pressure his subordinates only when the branch manager wasn't present. When the branch manager was around, he pretended to be a good boss and received high ratings. However, in reality, he had been treating his subordinates poorly, especially those weaker. The bank employees were afraid they wouldn't know what David would do to them if they revealed David's behavior to the branch manager. And when I was harassed, they had no choice but to look the other way.
Mr. Miller's response was the same. When I tried to speak up, the assistant branch manager stopped me and told me not to handle it. Mr. Miller, I am terribly sorry.
The bank employee apologized to me with tears.
Hey, don't say that in front of the branch manager.
David gestured for silence, putting his index finger to his lips. But the bank employee's accusations had already reached the branch manager's ears. Listening to their story, the branch manager was shaking with anger.
So, David, you've been doing as you please while I was away, mistreating Mr. Miller and your subordinates.
Wait a minute. You believe this, guys?
If they admired you, they wouldn't need to lie about being harassed.
David was cornered by the branch manager's logic and backed away, unable to find an excuse. Anyway, I cannot deposit my important money in a mega bank with such people. I'm sorry to say this to the branch manager who introduced me, but I will cancel the membership application and look for another bank. When I said that, the branch manager looked deeply apologetic.
Mr. Miller, I am truly sorry for this. What David did will be reported to the bank president for appropriate action. As an apology, we will offer you a dedicated concierge service and our utmost service. So please consider staying as a member.
The branch manager was not at fault, but he bore responsibility for overlooking David's reckless actions. I will leave David's punishment to you, but I do not want to deposit my money in a bank where the staff is not properly trained. I'll be leaving now.
Please wait, Mr. Miller.
As I firmly stated my decision, the branch manager was visibly shocked and glared at David.
David, apologize to Mr. Miller now.
I'm very sorry.
Under the branch manager's pressure, David finally apologized. When pressed about why he targeted me for harassment, David said it was because he was frustrated with the never-ending customer service and crowded conditions, using me as an outlet for his stress. The harassment was not frequent, but targeted at seemingly docile customers to skip their numbers and relieve stress. Hearing this, the branch manager was speechless. Of course, I couldn't believe it either.
I was a fool to trust you. I will report this matter to the bank president.
Please, not that. I'm so sorry. Anything but losing my job.
It was too late for apologies. Despite being given a chance to apologize earlier, David refused to acknowledge his actions. The branch manager and bank employees glared at David, shrunk in size. That arrogant man I first met was nowhere in sight. Following this, David was reprimanded by the branch manager for losing a major client and was reported to the bank president, facing severe criticism. He was further reported to the president of the bank on the matter and was struck with a severe thunderbolt. Aspiring for promotion from assistant branch manager, David received a poor evaluation from the bank president, permanently losing his chance for advancement. His customer service attitude, insidious harassment, and outlandish behavior became an issue, leading to his unprecedented dismissal. As the assistant branch manager of a mega bank, David had a substantial salary and a comfortable life, but after being fired, he struggled to find work and had to downgrade his living situation. He could not secure a decent job and failed to interview at other banks due to his inherent personality. David now barely makes ends meet with part-time jobs, leading his family to lose patience. His wife divorced him, taking a large sum in alimony and depleting his savings. The high-earning banker's life turned upside down, searching for jobs at the employment office. If he had sincerely apologized to me, he could have avoided this worst-case scenario, but David chose his own thorny path. With David gone, the bank regained its peace, and the employees seemed relieved to work there. Later, the branch manager and the bank president came to apologize to me, compensating for the mental distress caused by making me wait for a long time. I didn't need the compensation, but they offered to pay me the compensation for making me wait so long and causing me emotional pain. I refused to accept the compensation because I had enough money, but it would be a matter of honor for the mega bank if they didn't pay the compensation. They gave me double the market price. David was a scumbag, and it was refreshing to see him fired. But the branch manager and other employees finally took my side, and I told them I felt their good faith and would open an account with them. The branch manager and bank president were delighted, shaking hands firmly, looking forward to building a good relationship. Since then, I've become a premium member, receiving courteous service without any mistreatment at the bank. The bank offers excellent member benefits and retirement services, ensuring a secure life after retirement. Although I was frustrated by the long wait and poor service at the time, looking back, it turned out to be a blessing in disguise if it led to David's departure. Now, I'm building factories overseas to help foreigners looking for work, teaching them about fashion design. Fashion design skills will benefit the future, and I'm saving up assets to support those who want to start their own businesses. I thought to myself, I can spend $100 million, so I want to spend it on something meaningful and for the benefit of others.